So explain to us what libertarian is.
I hear that all the time. Let me tell you what libertarian is. Libertarian is someone who says you can be as liberal or as conservative as you want to be. Just don't force others to be like you.
Got it.
That's what we are all about. We are all about long-term solutions, not short-term solutions. We're all about changing culture, not just changing law. Law, we have to remember something. At the end of almost every single law is a guy or a gal with a gun who will put you in a cage. And if you don't want to go in that cage, he or she is going to kill you. That means you only use law when it really matters, not just because I'm angry, not because I don't like you, not because you should do some activity I think you shouldn't do, or whatever the case may be. It's only for important things like life and liberty and property and things like that. That's when you use violence. That's when you use force. That's what libertarians are all about. Welcome to Libertarians Drinking Coffee Live. Yes, I'm drinking coffee. The brand is strong. So happy you guys came. It is 3 p.m. Eastern, which means it must be time to be talking to libertarians and have some coffee. Of course it is. And what does that mean for you? That means if you care about us, you have to like, comment, and share. That matters. You've got to get out there. Make sure you're doing that, letting people know that this matters. As you hear me say every time, and I'm going to keep saying it, I am very happy that Jo Jorgensen's running for president, and I hope we all support her. I will. I'm voting for her. And on top of that, there are hundreds of libertarians running locally. They also matter in addition to her. We have to support all the libertarians running to make actual impact here. And the way we do that is getting around that media blockade, getting around that media blackout by creating our own media like this one, right? And hey, Shane has one too. Yes, let's follow all of those. Like, comment, and share. It really does matter. Please do that. I am very happy today. I have someone very special, someone who has decided to step up and run for office. Big dog time. We're talking Senate, a fellow devil dog, a motivator just like myself, the man himself, Shane Hazel. How are you, sir?
Oh, brother, better than I deserve. Thank you for having me on, man. This is great. The Larry Sharpe show. I got the message. I was like, oh, yeah, hell yeah, I'm coming on. That's what
I want to hear.
I appreciate it. I love your intro too, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, look, we're trying to get people to understand that, you know, one of the things you've seen me do, I'm sure 1,000 times, is I try to get outside of just libertarian world, right? I try to get others to come in and see us. And I try to provide a message that's open enough for them to at least want to talk to us, right? Not just think we're crazy people, but even though many of us are actually crazy people, but at least hear us first before you decide that, right? That's the critical piece, right?
Yeah. And I mean, and that, I'll tell you right now, we've got a golden opportunity. Like this 2020, the disaster that it is, this frictional time of growth and I think really just it's like a child, right? It's like, you know, when you're a child and you're growing, your bones hurt. As you see the outside world, a lot of times your soul hurts and you're trying to make heads and tails of what's going on out there.
It's growing pains.
It is growing pains, and we have this opportunity in 2020 to start really helping people understand. I was watching this the show this morning that one of my listeners sent to me. It's I Am Athlete, but they were calling it I Am Black. It's a third show, and these guys were talking about, you know, the problems in their area with, you know, Black Lives Matter and all that kind of stuff, and they were kind of tiptoeing through the tulips and dancing around without understanding what life, liberty, and property and the demands and basically the blueprint is for making sure that when you go down to have these discussions with your legislators, your sheriff, or whoever, they didn't understand, you know, really what the plan is. And I think it's probably because, like most of America, we have this public indoctrination system that is, you know, it gears us towards one style of thinking, right? It's prescribed.
Yep. Absolutely.
And we just
government's always the answer.
Yeah, and it's not. Obviously.
Yes, clearly. You think we would have learned this before. So look, you're talking about your community. I get that. I love it.
Yep.
There's a lot of ways you could have helped out your community, but you chose to run for office, and you didn't choose, you know, like sheriff. You went Senate. So let me ask you, why now and why Senate?
So let's back. We got to back up to understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. There's not one way, and I will obviously, you know, talk about first and foremost. a lot of what you can do in terms of, getting out there, creating name ID, and actually affecting change is at your local and city level, like your county level. It's a great place if you can, right? Like if you can get out there and you have the time and the means to run for sheriff, if you have the means to run for city council, great. If you have the means to run for assembly, like down here in the state of Georgia, I think it's about $15,000 that they get, and then they're only in session for about 4 or 5 months, depending, right?
Right.
And for me, like I have a career outside of this, so for me, it wasn't one of those things where I could drop a career with 5, maybe 6 people that are dependent on me, and say, hey, I can go down there and do this 4 or 5 months out of the year and ignore my career and then obviously take care of what matters first, and that's the family.
You had to actually get a sustainable position or not.
I did.
Makes sense.
And it sucks. But here's the other thing is,
why does it suck? That's a good thing. Someone's got to do it. I'm glad it's you.
Yeah, but I think I like to be able to sit there and live the life I'm preaching as well. And that's the one little nuance out there that I wish was a little bit different. But because having been overseas, having been part of the military industrial complex, to see our disastrous foreign policy up close and personal, and I'm talking like as a Marine reconnaissance man, to go out and see what that is. We have this really interesting take, this I don't want to say moral high ground, but definitely been there, done it, got the t-shirt.
No, it's moral high ground. I don't have a problem. Moral high ground. It's totally fine.
We know what we're talking about firsthand when it comes to foreign policy, and that's everything from kinetic, really hot war to disastrous trade, policies and things like that, on top of things like sanctions, which a lot of people in the United States are like, oh, cool.
Hold on. You're going down a road. I just want to know why you chose now in Senate, dude.
I will keep. So Senate, I ran as a Republican down here in 2018 for U.S. House. And I thought, hey, this is a local area. This is where I grew up. The guy who's here is an absolute catastrophe in terms of quote unquote being a Republican, right? And so I thought, hey, let's give this thing a chance inside of the duopoly, see if we can't run some asymmetrical warfare, meet them on their own ground, and try to take a lot of those things and put them into work locally. And so I saw the Republican Party from the inside for what it was. This, we're all about, economic, responsibility. We're all about the troops. We're all about, it's all, can I cuss on your show? Is that acceptable? It's all bullshit. Absolute bullshit. And they will stab you in the back at the same time as they're telling you, oh, we love all these things. We love the Constitution and all that kind of stuff. I was teaching the Constitution for free locally. And I was just like, I was met with daggers. And so I finally was like, you know what? This is not working. And Ryan Graham, the LP chair down here in Georgia, started, kind of picking at me a little bit. And he said, hey, man.
I like it.
Hey, man, you seem a lot more libertarian than you do Republican. And let's have a talk sometime. I like that. And thanks to Ryan Graham. He kept pushing at me. He kept going in and I finally said, hey, let's talk, man. What do you guys think? And
I like that he got you on. That's amazing. Now that he's got you on, I'm not letting you go. So now he's got you on. You're stuck. You didn't realize this, but you enlisted for 8 years just now. It's the same as the Marine Corps. It doesn't change. Same thing. That's right. You guys enlisted for 8 years. So
I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, but that's your inactive and active together. So you got to be part of us no matter what for 8 years. But I love it over here. You mentioned a bunch of issues, but give me your top 1, 2, or 3 that float to the top for you.
I mean, as a libertarian, it's got to be in the wars, in the Fed, in the empire, and obviously in the wars is all of them. Every lawless contradiction, piece of safety legislation and everything else that's ever been put forth, from Lyndon Baines Johnson to the war on poverty to the war on drugs to the war on terrorism and now the war on disease is all, is one of those things that we just use over and over and over again. I say the United States government uses to come in and absolutely decimate our inalienable natural rights. It makes for a caustic society, this police state that we're living in now.
So hold on. So that you're in the wars wasn't only Afghanistan. Your end of wars was war on poverty, war on drugs, and the empire. That was 3 separate issues.
Yeah.
Oh, you snuck in extras. I only asked you for 3. You put in like 9. Okay.
We're not binary individuals. We don't have to say this way or this way. It's all of the above. We can, first and foremost, we can't afford it.
All right. So let's go first to the war on terror. How about that? Can we start with that one?
Sure.
Here's you know the backlash you're going to get, right? And the war on terror. But then, Shane, clearly you're too ignorant to understand that we're fighting him over there, so we don't have to fight him over here. And you've never heard that before, ever. So I know it's the first time you've ever heard anyone ever say that.
I just about snorted coffee right out of my mouth there, man. It's just about.
You're going to hear that. So how do we get around that as libertarians?
So we've been fighting for almost 20 years in Afghanistan, right?
Yep.
They didn't attack us. We had a guy who was from, Saudi Arabia, part of the Wahhab sect of Islam. And thank you, Scott Horton, for teaching even myself a lot more about, what we have in terms of ideals as libertarians. Yeah, and just the Arabian Peninsula altogether. Iraq didn't touch us. We're still there. Syria never did a damn thing to us. Libya, the rest of the Middle East, right? So the fact that we are there, we have spent roughly $700 billion a year. I would say we're no freer. We're actually way less free because of the Patriot Act, the NDAA, things like that.
Shane, Bush kept us safe.
Yeah, right. From what the terrorists are here, man, and that's the thing is you look at what the major threat. If I'm looking at the threats to my liberty and why people hate us, I'm looking at the United States government going, why do they hate us? Do they hate us because we're free? Because we're not free anymore. Yeah. We are under the largest police state in an empire that has ever existed in our understanding of history.
Well, you've been overseas, so you know the same thing that I know, right? The average person outside of America, right, the non-American, they love Americans, but man, they hate our government.
Yeah.
I mean, that's true almost anywhere you go. They love Americans and hate our government.
But we have it all in common. That's the thing is
there we go. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we all hate governments, and that's the problem, right? Is this thing that the anti-federalists call the aristocratic combination. This back and forth between the corporatists, the people who are running trade circles, the people who are running religion, the people who are running government corporations, and all of these things. That's the aristocratic combination. And whenever they can get together and work together to keep people out of the market, to keep old ways of manufacturing, of intellectual property, and a whole bunch of other things. I mean, that's what they have always done in history. That's what they're doing now. And now that everybody's uncomfortable is probably the reason why you're seeing the unrest in this country that you are. And like I said, it's good.
So let's go then to war on drugs, right?
Sure.
And again, you know what I was going to say. If you end the war on drugs, then there's going to be drugs and violence in all the cool communities, right? The cool communities, there'll be drugs and violence in our cool communities. We can't have that.
What, like prison? Because, I mean, that's the war on drugs. War on drugs is a $47 billion a year campaign, right? And it hasn't kept drugs out of the hardest places to get into, including prison, right? So if it's not going to get out, it's not going to get out of the cool places. So when we look at examples throughout America, throughout the world for that matter, you don't see, men and women basically going in and knocking off, your local convenience store, your local pharmacy. You don't see that happening. That's the same thing. If we can start to take the power out of the CIA's hands, the FBI's hands, the DEA's hands, the ATF, the rest of them, and start to say, hey, listen, private sector, we can start to qualify these things or not, whatever, because it's the private sector and you guys can, buy, risky drugs over there, or you can buy drugs that have had a whole bunch of research, a whole bunch of development and understanding. We have places like, I don't know, where we have like, chiropractors and float tanks and things like that, where people who are studied in non-Western, more of the Eastern type of medicine, go out and they put forth the money to understand these things, because if they want to sell, they want to be in that market space, they're going to have to be experts. And that's what, basically the law of specification and division in terms of, you're talking your Rothbard and your Mises and people like that. that's what is going to happen naturally, because if they are going to excel, if they are going to prevail in a market of ideas and services and goods, they're going to have to be the best at it. And so
but then aren't kids going to be snorting heroin?
I don't know. Are they now? Of course they are. They're snorting heroin now. Like drugs.
I have no idea. I told you. I just said I'm a scared thing, Shane. I have no idea if it makes any sense. I'm just scared. But what about the children?
Well, but I think studies actually show, right? Like in Colorado, where they legalized cannabis in one of the first places, and psychedelics for that matter, in terms of mushrooms, those places haven't seen an uptick in juvenile use. They have seen actually a leveling off, if not a decline, over the years since then. And when we look at when we look at history and when we look at markets, this is what always happens. If there's a easier drug to get in terms of THC or psychedelics or something, and it is controlled, there are shamans, there are people out there who can guide people through the practical use in their everyday life, whether it's medicinal or recreational or both. Sure. It comes down to freedom, right? It comes down to.
I had someone on the show yesterday, Amanda Billings, who actually said that she believes that all use of any type of drug or medicine, that it's all actually health, even if it's recreational, because it's still good for your health.
Yeah, I mean, it's like having a donut once in a while, right? It's good for your. It's like having a donut for your spirit, right? It makes you feel good sometimes.
Absolutely. So maybe it's all medicinal. See that?
I think there's a lot to be said for it, man.
I like how she's thinking.
I do too.
That's good. So, all right. So let's go to the last of the wars you brought up, the war on poverty.
Yeah.
Right. How do we handle that one? And right now, obviously, people are afraid because the COVID response has devastated our economy. A lot of people out of work. A lot of businesses shut down. So you start talking war on poverty, aren't people going to say, look, Shane, we need it more than ever, right? I mean, we're devastated. People are going to be poor. Don't we need it more than ever?
So let's look at the war on poverty. I think in 60, whatever it was, was it Lyndon Baines Johnson?
65.
65.
Right.
Thank you. When he instituted the war on poverty, what we started doing was saying, hey, listen, there's a quote unquote special class of people out there that needs help, right? We're going to take money at the gunpoint, at force and coercion, and we're going to redistribute it to, the lesser people in our society versus going through a charity. Now, at that time, the Black community in America had a 23% fatherless home rate, which was extremely high at the time. It was, and thought, hey, we've got to do better than this. Today, 2019, 2020, because of the incentives to not have a father in the home, people are now in the Black community are 70% likely not to have a father in the home. And just because we went through Father's Day, the amount of, the amount of implied understanding, subjective understanding to understand that, hey, if you're 7 times more likely to experience poverty, you are 14 times more likely to get knocked up as a teenager without a father in the home. You're more likely to be in prison. You're more likely to abuse drugs. You're more likely to just go down this path of waste. And that, I see that, and trust me, I'm all about whatever type of household you want. If you got a loving, nurturing family, one parent busting their ass, but I'll tell you right now, as a father, one of the greatest things we could do is stop the war on poverty, stop redistributing, and give people that sense of worth to say, hey, listen, in a great economy where you can go out and you can barter your time and effort for a job in that community, if they can go out and do that and now work their butt off for a paycheck, that sense of accomplishment gives them something that a handout never ever will, and that is a sense of pride. It is self-respect, and those type of things are absolutely what lift this nation. The ability to then grow yourself within a company, maybe even entrepreneurship, and I talk about this a lot. Passion in this country has not been fostered because of the educational system or the government indoctrination system. So therefore, if we can't chase our passion, we cannot realize our genius. And genius is what made America happen, where we could grow geniuses that would lift all of humanity at the same time, not evenly, but that's what we're looking.
Yeah. Let me move to the next one, which is also you're hitting some controversial pieces. And you went 5. I only asked for 3. You went 5, which is fine. I'll go 5.
I got opinions, man.
I'll go 5. So let's go to the Fed. And I tell this story often. So I want to make sure I tell it again because it really does matter. I was actually teaching, I teach leadership when my Lord and Master, King Andrew Cuomo II of New York, allows me to work and doesn't lock me in my home. When my Lord and Master allows me to work, I actually go out and I teach. Sure. So I hope His Grace will allow me to work soon. Be nice. So hopefully He will. So when I do teach, I often will teach New York City agencies or large companies, tech or law. And in one specific case, I'm teaching New York City agencies. So these are professional people, all credentialed, all educated, and there were probably 60% male, 40% female, all between the ages of, say, 30 and 60, if you can get the idea of who was in the room. Mm-hmm. I never talk politics unless it's a break and someone brings it up. In this case, it was a break, and someone brought it up. This is probably 4 years ago, 5 years ago maybe, and someone says, boy, I'm so glad we have the Fed. You know, the Fed really saved us during the crash. Without that, we'd be gone. Right. And so all I said was, do you guys know that the Fed is a private bank? It's basically like a banking cartel like that. Every one of them. No. And I said, you got your phones? Google it. So they Google it. And all of a sudden, you hear, oh, what? Oh, my God, really? I'm like, yeah. And I go, right. Do you know the Fed just basically magically makes money? Just makes it and gives it to us?
Let's call it counterfeiting.
Well, I just said, but that's too far for them, right? They didn't even know the Fed wasn't even government. So I just said, do you know that? And they were like, no, it doesn't. I just showed them I was right 30 seconds ago, and they were still like, no. And I said, just check it. And they went and checked it. And like, oh, my God, you're right. Yeah. And I only say this because I want the libertarian world that is very often understands the Fed, knows how bad it is. Mm-hmm. The average American has no idea. And if you even ask the average American, do we need a central bank? They would say, what's a central bank? They have no idea what it is. And if they happen to know what one is, if you find one who knows, they will go, we don't need a central bank. We've got the Fed. They would not have an idea. And I know this because I've done this many times. So I'm bringing this up as kind of context, as I know you now say you want to end the Fed.
Right.
Go down that road.
So ending the Fed, obviously, great slogan that caught on, I think, probably during Ron Paul's time in 2008 when he was running out there. And I think I discovered the Creature from Jekyll Island probably about 2005, 2006, opened a lot of my understanding in terms of monetary policy. And then obviously found the Mises Institute where, everything Rothbard and Mises is out there for our understanding. Basically, it comes down to understanding that Austrian versus Keynesian type of thought. And that's one of the greatest things that in terms of teaching somebody that doesn't know anything about Austrian, about economics, right? Everybody will talk about micro and macro, which is, what the universities and your public indoctrination system wants you to think that are your two choices, like, your two choices of Democrat and Republican. It's a false paradigm. This whole thing with Keynesian versus Austrian is very simply put, it's we are either going to be a debt-based economy or we are going to be a savings-based economy. And then you can explain to them, obviously, taking that time and the resources and hammering out a plow versus, spending it on something different versus, a debt-based economy is for you and me. If we live in debt, we're going to be living as slaves our entire life because we are paying and paying and paying.
Yep.
And so this cyclical understanding of ending the Fed through Austrian and Keynesian with, economics in the history there, that's one of those great seeds. And to your point where, your anecdote of the story where you give people something and 30 seconds later, they're like, no way, you're still wrong. Right.
Yes.
Well, that happens a lot because, they're baby birds. And I say this all the time, right? Baby birds are one of those things that you have to be very delicate with.
Right.
And you gotta love the shit out of them because, what we say down here is God bless their heart, right? It's like,
yes,
gotta be really careful because if you overfeed them those really god awful hairy pills, right? Like they're just going to throw it up.
Yep.
And they're going to be like, no, that guy's nuts. I can't listen to him. He's crazy.
100%.
You give them that little seed, right? You plant that seed and you let the wrinkle around it kind of just form. And then they come back to you and they go, hey man, I was reading up on the creature from Jekyll Island, or hey, maybe I went and checked out some Rothbard or something like that. And now they're on this path to understanding what the monetary system is, what the Fed is.
Yep.
And for us, in terms of ending the Fed, I mean, it's real simple, right? Like we've been talking about this since the 1940s in terms of libertarians. You can't run an economy based on debt, because for that first dollar that you put out there, that first dollar that you put out there for everybody, now when you pay it back, you owe them something you don't have.
Yep.
You can't ever pay it off. And that's the,
people ask me all the time, Larry, do you think New York will go default? And I go, there's no other alternative.
Yeah, at this point,
at one point it has to, right?
What was it back in like I don't know, during the Bush administration when people were talking about like $10 trillion, and we were like, oh, what? $10 trillion. People would say all the time, a country cannot survive this kind of debt. And now, by the end of the year, mark my words, we're going to be looking at $30 trillion,
triple
right?
that.
So the fact that anybody thinks that we're going to pay down the debt, or we're not going to have deficit spending as long as these criminals, thieves, and murderers are in office is kidding themselves.
I wish we had 10 trillion in debt now. I'd be like, what? He got it down to 10 trillion? He's the greatest president ever. Oh my God.
5D chess, man.
Oh my God. If he got to 10 trillion, I'm like, he's the greatest president ever. Holy cow. Yeah, I think he's awesome.
Maybe we should lift that 8-year bond, right?
It's crazy. All right, so you brought up also one more, which is the war on disease. I'm assuming you mean the COVID crisis, or no? Is that where you were going with that?
Yeah.
COVID's been massive this year. I mean, it's affected so much of our country in so many different ways. It's affected us socially, culturally, financially, physically, all the people who've passed. I mean, it's been a big deal. And since so many of the people who've died have been seniors, that also affects families. I mean, it's affected us in a lot of ways. What's your view on this one?
Boy, I mean, one of the first things that comes to my mind is the fact that the government just came out and was supported, what they'll say bipartisanly, right? Bipartisanly across the board, whether you're in New York or you're down here in Georgia, where governors, executives, mayors, police chiefs, sheriffs all came out and said there is part of this population that is non-essential. What the hell? I mean, first and foremost, everybody in an economy is essential, for God's sakes. Economy is goods, services, and production. And whenever you tell part of the populace that they're not essential and they're not part of the economy, what's the economy going to do? It's going to tank, right? But we knew that was coming because we all understand Austrian economics. We've been talking about it for a long time. The second thing is when you look at, things that maybe we're a little more studied in as Marines, in terms of going in and taking over a country, to the disruption, the division, the fear mongering.
Yep.
If you know what it is and you know how it's done, you recognize that our own damn government came into the United States and has been doing, but especially ramped up this year, that part of their modus operandi, their MO, to come out and make everybody hysterical. And, because we've got, 5-second memories and we don't actually listen to the quote unquote experts out there. Like, we're just going to go to one epidemiologist out there and have him prescribe through government channels how we're going to handle this as a country.
But there's two bigger problems I've seen. Tell me if I'm wrong here. The problem number one is, regardless of whether we got one guy or consensus of 1,000 people or whatever that group, whatever your logic in saying we should do X, whatever X is, however you get there, why is it okay for the government then to just enact that? That's the problem, right? I actually don't mind the government deciding that we as the government believe this is the right way of doing things. That's fine. But then post that someplace, give that information to us, allow us to use it. And in fact, you can even give us a gold star if we choose to do that, because then you're government sponsored. I love that idea.
at
But
your
so that's
state
side one.
and local level, right? Like
Whatever level. You can do it federally if you want to, but then it's just a gold star. I don't mind if you want to do it as long as it's voluntary. That is my critical piece. If the government, the federal government, which usually has more resources, not always, but usually does, if it wants to take its resources and put it on a piece of paper and go, sorry, piece of paper, I'm old, a website, and say, here's this stuff we found. Now your Georgia government can go, let's use that plus our people to make our thing. And then locally they can go, you know what? We like Georgia. We don't have to make our thing. Or we want our people to also make our thing. And we can have multiple things. Well, monopoly broken.
Well, and this is where I get back to genius, right? Like the ability to solve a problem when you centralize it anywhere, whether it's at the federal level, state level, county, it's all centralization because it's not you working on the problem. If we've got 300 million people in America, and let's just say for the sake of numbers, let's just say about 150 million of them are actual contributing adults to society, like not infirmed, not sick, not a child. I got 150 million people ready to go to work for their best interest on this problem. But no, the government, because we spent $25 trillion, right? And we've got a CDC. We've been contributing to NGOs like the World Health Organization. We've been doing all these extracurricular, extra constitutional things that we should have never been doing in the first place.
Absolutely.
And because we're $26 trillion in debt, we can't back off because we're supposed to have the answers. And so what do?
Yes, we are.
They double down, and it's our way or the highway. And that's where you see the police brutality coming out. And that was the best thing about, I don't know, the early part of COVID, right? When I say best thing, silver lining, right, was where the suburbs and the rural areas started to finally see what the police state was all about in terms of people on surfboards, people on beaches, playing on playgrounds, moms with their kids. Like when that community in those areas started to see the police brutality for non-violent crime, man.
But hold on, I got to go to the second piece here. Hold on, my first was government, but here's the second piece because I'm going to push back on you on this one because of where I live. Mm-hmm. And the second part of that is not only did government decide however they decided that this is the right way, once they implemented it, there was virtually no pushback. Yeah. We accepted it as, okay, I'm non-essential. Thank you, Your Majesty. I'm not essential.
Where's my $1,600 or whatever it was, right?
Whatever. I'm not essential. But what happened in New York City and many large cities is not only did we accept the edicts of our overlords, but we jumped on board. Yeah. So you're saying the police brutality, a lot of local people called and asked for it. They literally picked the phone and they said, yes, the Karens. I live in the belly of the beast. Yeah. I live in New York City where literally we have a special number for this. It's not 911. We have a special number for the Karens.
Yeah.
And it's not 1-800 I'm a Nazi. It's not that. Or I'm a 1-800 squealer. It's not that. There's actually a
that could be a totally different place.
Yes. So we have this now, and in my community in Queens, we have the highest rate of calls to that number in the entire country.
Of course, a bunch of busybodies, And
yes. So not only did we agree to it, we joined in.
Mass hysteria. It like I said, man, it's MO. Where are those fault lines? Where are those cracks? How do we lean on them? And how do we get these people to turn on their fellow man in support of the state? Like those guys have the answers. It's crazy.
Yes.
When you point it out and you can have civil conversations, I think we're winning though. And I think that's the greatest thing about this whole mess in 2020 is we are in that moment where we are finally connecting with people, not only from urban areas, but from suburban areas and rural areas on top of it to say, hey, listen, guys, I know you guys think that guy's a lesser evil and that guy's a lesser evil. But here's the thing is in 2020, if you're looking at, Joe Biden, that guy's the author of the crime bill. If you're looking at Trump, he hasn't ended any wars. He hasn't done anything with the Fed. He hasn't done anything with the bureaucracies out there. you are less free. We have more war. We have more debt. And it doesn't matter because in, 2016, the Republicans had the majority of everything out there, including the presidency. And in 2009, 2010, the Democrats had it. And before that, the Republicans had it. So in my voting lifetime, I have seen absolute majorities across the board, and the only thing you get is less freedom, more debt, more war, and more police state, to the point where we're here in 2020. So now's the difference, right? Now's the time to strike.
Let's do this. Let's go to the last part you mentioned, which was the police brutality. Let's go George Floyd, right after COVID, and a guy, Tim O'Connor here in New York, I'm gonna steal his saying. He said, COVID basically made kindling, and then George Floyd lit the match, right? I mean, we were ripe to be, we're sitting at home for 3 months doing nothing with no mission, no anything. And then all of a sudden this happens, and we're like, out in the streets, here we go. Absolutely. Yeah. So tell me, what do you think about this part?
George Floyd was just what I'll say, the snowflake on top of the mountain for the avalanche, right? Yep. This has been going on for everybody, for as long as I've been a human being on this earth, and long before that. It was straight up murder. There is no question about it. And I'll tell you right now, Rashard Brooks down here in Atlanta, this won't be popular, but that's murder too. The idea of policing in America right now is so out of control. And to juxtapose that against my time as a guy in special operations overseas, let's talk about that, right?
I talk about this all the time. The rules of engagement are harder for us than cops.
Yeah, way worse. If somebody would have taken a non-lethal weapon off of my person in the Middle East and turned around and sprayed me with it, fired it at me or something else, if there was a camera pointed at me and I would have killed that guy right there, I would have been all over the news. I would have been NJP'd, and I would probably be in Leavenworth. That, to me, is absolutely asinine. The idea of training and escalation and de-escalation.
Yes.
I mean, Jesus, what was George Floyd doing? He was what, inebriated just a small bit, and now what, we're gonna take a knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds,
and he was already on the floor and handcuffed. Already on the floor and handcuffed, and there were 3 cops.
And dudes are just standing around too, and that's the problem. Is like everybody's standing around filming. Do something. Do something, do something, do something. Stop recording.
One thing I got to bring up on the do something piece. This is a black community.
Yeah.
You can't do something.
You
can't do something. If you do something, you're dead.
Well,
and they know it, and that's why they don't do it.
I think
you're dead.
I think that's where, a lot of us, like myself, have kind of just come to that point in our life where there's no way, if a man's being murdered in front of me, that I don't care about a silly badge. I don't care about a uniform. Something is going to be done. And that has to be a place where you're at comfortably with your own soul, right? Like for me, if that's the way I go out, is standing up for a guy who's cuffed, who's on the ground, who's having somebody kill him. Boy, I guess it's my day, man. And I say that, but the thing is I don't want to take away from that community's ability to organize, to do something, to put pressure on, to change culture to where we call this kind of stuff out. But with this, the whole police state that we're experiencing now, a lot of people are just sitting there going, well, we need more of it. Like in terms of, especially, I also say both the Democrats and the Republicans, what they're doing in terms of picking winners and losers with bank bailouts and corporation bailouts and things like that. They've picked the winners and the losers. They're rallying.
I want to go back to the idea you mentioned about the brutality piece, right?
Yeah.
I see this as not, don't get me wrong. It is without question, this is a time when we're supposed to be talking about the black community. I get it. I want to do an and also piece, not a but, an and also piece. There was recently a guy here in Queens, a Greek guy, Greek descent. He wasn't actually from Greece, but Greek descent. So white guy who was also recently tased and killed by the police.
Yeah.
Now, that does not mean, again, I'm taking nothing away from what happened with George Floyd. What I'm saying is this is also a byproduct of that. A violent police force that is afraid and will use violence quickly, either because of a lack of training or what I've said before, the cops do too much. You're expecting a cop to deal with someone who's a murderer and then right the next step deal with a family law issue where they're dealing with, a husband and wife talking, and then with some guy who's a homeless guy. How are they going to do this? It's horrible, right? They can't do this. And now they go into this situation where they've got some guy, and now they killed the white guy. Now, it's definitely worse for black people, no question. Not even going to go there. What I'm saying is this now overflows, like the war on poverty and like the war on drugs. The war on poverty in the 60s and the war on drugs in the 70s was meant to attack the black population.
Yeah.
Now
absolutely.
it affects the white population too. And this Greek kid who's dead is a part of that at overflow. It was meant on this, and now it goes to everybody.
We can circle back to the war on drugs too, and I definitely agree with you. I think one of the best things that we can do is teach people and to define what crime is first and foremost.
Okay,
let's define crime. It's super simple: murder, rape, assault, coercion, property damage, property theft, robbery, things like that. Those are real crimes. And the thing is outside of that, and this, in this, proverbial tinderbox that we have right now, why aren't we saying, hey, sheriff, hey, police chief, whoever you are, mayor, governor, why not take a step back and let's treat police like firemen. They harbor at the precinct until they are called to one of those things. The second thing we can do is have those people retrain their 911 operators, right? Sure. Retrain them, because right now with all the Karens calling in, what should we be doing? We should be saying, hey, sir or ma'am, because that guy is carrying openly, he is, speaking, they are within 6 feet. Hey, listen, caller, those aren't crimes. Those are rights that those people
But the sad part is in New York, they are crimes. I'm not joking. See, you're saying what should be. I'm saying what is. In New York City, if you don't do what they tell you to do, it's a $500 fine. And if it's a second time, it's $1,000 fine. Yeah. Or they'll arrest you the third time and put you in Rikers Island, which is full of COVID and the most violent jail in the entire country. Yeah. I live in a police state, so I just want you to understand my mindset's a little bit different than yours.
Well, hey, if you guys are looking to change, your perspective in geographic area, I'll tell you right now, North Georgia's pretty nice.
There we go. See, he's making a pitch.
Well, so let me ask you, I'm pulling people through the Liberty movement so that I don't have to go to New Hampshire, for God's sake. It's too damn cold up there.
Yes. So let me go. Someone asked, who are you running against? So let me ask about your actual race. Yeah. 2-person race, 3-person race, 4-person race. What is it?
3. And Georgia is primed this year. We have had. I'm running against a guy named Senator David Perdue. He is he's a 57% constitutional voter in terms of his record, and so that's one of the things I keep up with, because it's a really easy thing to go out there and hammer a Republican on constitutional voting in front of Republicans, right?
Right.
And because we're better on economics, we're better on all of those things than those guys are, and we're better on things like foreign policy and social issues than the left is. So let's go to those sides and let's hammer them. And then we've got a guy named Jon Ossoff, who is probably more nationally known than even David Perdue. Now, David Perdue is Donald Trump's good old boy network, right? He's his lapdog. He's a yes man. He is one of those guys that'll come out and say non-essential this, non-essential that. I love the working people, but I'm going to bail out the banks. Then you got Jon Ossoff, who is this young guy. He's kind of a beta male. He's, the separation, the distance, the COVID, be scared, be fearful, and the government is going to solve your problems. Okay. So we have this really golden opportunity. I polled 7%. I haven't spent a dime.
Oh my God, you polled 7%.
Yeah.
Nice. Congrats.
In the GOP poll conducted by Perdue's team, we polled 7%. I haven't spent a dime. The couple of things.
Hold on. Now it's perfect timing. You haven't spent a dime. So guys, support this man. At the bottom of your screen, you're going to see it says ShaneHazel.com. If he's already polling at 7%, that means he can make impact. If you like what he's saying, then do me a favor. Head over there, donate. If you've got a couple bucks, throw it his way. If you've got a bunch of money and you're one of those super rich guys who's sitting at home watching Larry Sharpe because I'm so handsome and so good looking and you got nothing better to do with all your money, awesome. Throw him like $500 or $1,000. You got all that money, you Mr. Rich Guy. Mr. Rich Guy, go ahead, do that. Show off. Show me how rich you are by giving him your money. I will be thoroughly impressed. But I'm not just done with that. He doesn't just need money. He also needs people. He needs time. He needs volunteers. If you are in the Georgia area and you think you can help him out, either with social media, putting up memes, coming up with content, doing sign waving, showing up at events, sharing his stuff online, any of those things, heading over to shanehazel.com, volunteer, sign up, let him know you're in. If you're in, you're in. I know some of you I bug all the time. Some of you haven't picked a horse to get behind. What are you waiting for? I'm giving you great horses. Pick one you like. Get behind them. Support them. We need to either put time or put money behind our candidates, or both if you got it, so that we can move forward. It's shanehazel.com. Please do something now, particularly if you're in this area. If you're in Georgia, you're crazy to not do something to support this man. Thank you, Shane. Go ahead.
Hey, no, thank you. And you know what's crazy is I've told everybody out there that, good campaigns don't need money. They need ideas and they need to be shared, right? Mm-hmm. And I've told everybody, especially during this time, that political campaigns are a giant waste of resources. So I've said, hey, man, if you've got that extra money, I'd say I've got Radical. That's my show. Before that, I did The Rebellion. That was my other podcast, and there's about 200 episodes of that out there. Share that kind of stuff. That for me, in terms of ROI, is absolutely top tier, right? So if you got tons of money, thank you and everything, but you also got a local community. Go help somebody who's struggling in that. Do not
listen to him. Ignore this man. Give him money. Ignore this man. Give him money. Stop talking, Shane. You're done.
And the last, and that's part of being radical, right?
How are you going to make impact in your race?
So we are obviously we already are starting to make a giant impact, right? Where now the news organizations will try to absolutely never ever mention us, and they did it in my last campaign and things like that. That's why social media and people like yourself. That's why things like podcasts are the way that I think is part of the future in terms of doing this kind of stuff. You got to be available. You got to answer questions. You got to be on the records for hundreds and hundreds of hours for people and thousands, really, so people can go out and get to know you. What are your thoughts? Is he consistent? Is he saying the same thing yesterday that he's saying today? Now, our
That's
perspective.
The strength of Bernie Sanders, isn't it?
It sure is.
I mean, I'm not a fan of Bernie, but I got to tell you, the guy's consistent, and people do love that. That's attractive, and it draws people. Exactly what you're saying. Bernie has it in the absolute wrong direction, but he absolutely has it.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Bernie. If Bernie wasn't such a damn status and a closet capitalist, because let's face it, the guy got rich off of selling books, and he said, "Oh no, that's my money." But besides that as well, I'm also telling people, hey, listen, I'm one term and done. 6 years in the Senate, that's enough of my life that I'm willing to sacrifice. I've got young kids and all that kind of stuff. That right there is incentive enough for a lot of people to go, maybe this guy isn't about power. Maybe this guy is actually really talking about what he wants. I don't want your money now. I don't want your money when I'm in there. All these things are how you make impact in terms of revolutionizing the way people run for office at every level is the blueprint that I'm putting forth here.
So tell me about Radical real fast. Pump that real fast.
So Radical is my my solo project here, where I have really tried to hone in on not only in the wars, in the Fed, in the empire, but peace, liberty, and free markets. And how are people out there who are absolutely changing this world doing it for them? And I don't care if it's politics. I don't care if it's community. I don't care if it's going out in terms of charity. I don't care if it's yoga. I want to know who these people are who are absolutely bucking the system and their government indoctrination and going out there and providing a service or a good to the community, maybe even for free as charity. And I'll tell you right now, that type of thing, that has the power to reach people. It has the power to inspire people.
So how do we get a hold of Radical?
Radical, you can just go to Shane Hazel GA. That's my Facebook page. It is all over that. Shane T. Hazel at Twitter. And it's streamed there Monday, Wednesdays, and Friday nights usually. So you can catch it there. You can go to basically any platform out there in terms of podcasts as well. It's all over the place. So I'd really appreciate it if you guys tuned in. Maybe gave it a 5-star review if you listen to a few of them. Yeah.
There we go.
And
I love that.
That obviously lifts us to the kind of the top in terms of algorithms so that we can affect more culture.
So let me ask you, in your race, do you have a cool slogan like a Medicaid for all or build that wall or something like that? You got one of those?
Oh, no. My slogan is in the wars, in the Fed, and in the empire.
I like it. End the wars, end the Fed, end the empire. I like all of those. So look, I know that, it'd be awesome if you win. Everybody watching, listening, be crazy. They go nuts if you win. I hope you win.
Sure.
What happens if you don't? Do you have like a secondary victory? As I always say, for me, it was very easy. In New York State, we have ballot access issues. Mm-hmm. So if I lose the election, my consolation prize is I get ballot access, right? So for me, it was very easy. Not everybody else has that same easiness. Do you have like a consolation prize if you lose?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've obviously defined winning as something totally different than actually being a senator from the state of Georgia. Yeah, and so I mean, it's teaching. It's bringing people to the liberty movement that have never heard of these ideas, that have never been able to put their finger on exactly what's wrong, right? It's like that part in the Matrix where people are walking along and they have no idea that they're in the Matrix. To be able to bring 1, 2, 3, whatever, how many ever people that I can to that realization that, hey, life isn't what I thought it was inside this Matrix. Life is completely different. Most everything that I've ever been told is a lie. Like that is enough for me to plant seeds and then obviously grow this.
You want to be Morpheus. I got you. We all want to be Morpheus. I got it. We all want to be Morpheus. I want to be Morpheus too. I got it. My question though is, how do you measure that, right? Is that by more people being on your podcast? Is that by more people registering libertarian? Is that by more people, a percentage of the vote you get? Is that, number of people at national who join? Do you have a way of saying, you know what? Yeah, I've made the scoreboard, right? How do you know you put points on the board?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first and foremost is we make the race very expensive for the duopoly, right? We down here, if you don't get 51% of the vote in the general, you go to a runoff first and foremost. So we also have this golden opportunity to sit there and say, hey, listen, for the first time, maybe in your lifetime, you have the chance to do a do-over, because no matter what, if we're already polling at 7%, this is going to a runoff. So vote your conscience this time around and send a message.
Brilliant.
Right? And they go to the runoff.
It'll make national news. It'll make national news for a runoff.
Yeah, they'll leave the libertarian or not mention who was happening. But that for me, that little bit where we can just affect culture just a little bit. If I'm doing my part, you're doing your part. We got people like Dave Smith and Tom Woods and all of these people out there that have this alternative media that are gaining attention and really, really affecting this culture. Boy, what more do you want in life? To be able to be one of those people for your kids, your grandkids, to be able to look back at something like this and the years to come and go, oh, holy cow, man, look at dad, look at grandpa, look, these guys were at the cutting edge of the 2020 revolution when it wasn't popular. I mean, for me, boy, I'll tell you what, that's victory enough for me in this lifetime.
I love it. Well, I got to say, Shane, I want to say thank you so much for coming on. This was an amazing show. We got a lot of people doing all kind of crazy stuff in the comments, which is always good. I know to move around. You were able to pump yourself. I was able to tell you to stop not asking for money. Take my money, damn it. And also we were able to talk about Radical. So even better. Radical is even better. We can talk about that also. I want to say thanks for coming on. Guys, thanks for watching. And I'm going to be back here tomorrow talking more trash. I will see you guys soon.